Welcome to Let the Boys Kiss, the creation of queer ships, where we ask the question, is it queer baiting, queer coding, or queer canon?
This week we'll be discussing Jack and Eric from Boy Meets World. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kelsey.
Boy Meets World, blast from the past.
Sitcom from our youth.
Very exciting. This was requested, so that's always exciting for us. And as soon as they said it, we were like, Boy Meets World. That's a world we would like to go back to.
Indeed, we did cover it a little bit in our sort of comedies hodgepodge episode, but happy to be doing a deeper dive. And I think the fact that we got a request for Jack and Eric also explains why we are not doing Corey and Sean.
Yes, which is maybe the biggest ship. I feel like they're becoming sort of equal now at this point, but certainly a big ship from that show. So if you would like us to do Corey and Sean, we're more than happy to go back, but we're just doing Jack and Eric today because that's what we were asked to do.
Indeed, and we should say too, when we looked at the fic, we also saw there was some Corey, Sean, Topanga.
Yes, so if people are interested in a little OT3 action, we could be up for that.
Yeah, let us know.
Okay.
So, as we said, though, we are covering Jack and Eric. Who are these two gentlemen?
Well, Eric is the brother of Corey, the show's main character, and Jack is the half-brother of Sean, another main character of the show, and the two of them are roommates.
Oh my God, they were roommates. Yes, and in terms of what we're covering, Jack, who is, as we said, Sean's half-brother, only joins the show in season 5. So we just watched seasons 5 through 7 of Boy Meets World.
Yes, indeedy. All right, so should we talk about why people are shipping these two, other than the fact that they were roommates, which honestly is enough?
Oh my God, they were roommates. And they're cute white boys.
They're cute white boys. It's happening.
Sure. So I think this ship kicks off pretty strong.
I agree. In the first scene.
So Jack has shown up. We've never met this character before. I don't think we knew that Sean had a long lost half-brother.
Sean's always got family members appearing and disappearing, and you never know. Whatever the show requires.
So he shows up in town. He's going to the local university, Pembroke, and he needs a roommate. And this is a big deal for Corey in particular because Eric is also going to Pembroke, but he neglected to sign up for housing in an appropriate time frame and is threatening to move back into the family home. And Corey's excited to have the bedroom all to himself. So Corey's on a mission to get Eric a roommate. And lo and behold, a potential roommate just wanders into their local diner spot.
As Corey is like, what? Is somebody just going to walk in and yell out, I need a roommate? And basically, that's what happened. And so Corey says, have I got a roommate for you? And pulls out of his wallet a picture of Eric, which is quite the move.
And Jack takes a look at that picture, and his initial response to this photo is, good looking guy, easy on the eyes. Could be some competition for the ladies. Nah.
He stares at the photo forever, like 20 seconds or something.
I also just feel like if I'm looking for a roommate and someone shows me a picture of someone, I'm not going to be like, okay. I'd be like, oh, okay, that's not going to help me.
They look like a human. What are they like?
Yes.
I just like it because it is that cliched thing of a grandmother or something is trying to set you up on a blind date with their grandchild. And they're like, look at her picture. Isn't she beautiful?
Yeah. Exactly. And the response of, good looking guy. Easy on the eyes.
Easy on the eyes.
Pause. Could be competition for the ladies.
Amazing. An excellent first, not even meeting. Before they meet, they're already being super shippy. So, the premise then of this episode is Corey is trying to get the two of them to agree to be roommates, and Eric, for whatever reason, is resistant. So he meets Jack, and the two of them seem to have a lot in common. They do a thing where they're like, what's your favorite color? At the same time, they say, blue. And they do the like, why are you interested in pets? No. Do you like this? Do you like that? And so they seem like a perfect match. And Corey's like, yay, it's happening. And as soon as Jack walks away, Eric says, I don't like him. And so Corey gives him a speech that is like, what are you talking about? You and Jack are so perfect for each other. You should be married.
And Eric's response to that is, I'm not ready.
I'm not ready. God, I love Eric.
He's so fun. So that's our intro. That's how we're getting into the Jack-Eric dynamic. And I think overall, season 5 is the shippiest of the 3 that they share together. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to choose from.
So we've just called some of our favorite moments. Mm-hmm. Pretty early on, there's an episode where Jack is forced to choose between Eric and a girl that he's trying to date. And things are a little bit complicated by the fact that she's a witch. And so... Yes.
She's Candace Cameron.
She's Candace Cameron. Playing a witch, which is shocking behavior for Candace Cameron, honestly.
Well, these
days. But yeah, the whole episode plays out as Eric trying to get Jack to stop dating this girl, and Jack being like, well, if you're so jealous of this girl, maybe we should just be roommates and not friends. And that's the whole back and forth. And then, of course, it turns out that Eric is right because, spoiler, Eric is always right about people. He knows when they're bad and when they're good. And so Eric ends up having to save Jack from potentially being sacrificed by this coven of witches. And immediately forgives him entirely. And Jack's like, I can't believe you've forgiven me after all I did for you. And he's like, hey, man, we're friends. And you're like, that's nice. Yeah.
And that's a very fun episode overall. It's just a good episode.
Coven of Witches is a classic 90s plot.
Yes. And we believe Sabrina the Teenage Witch must have been premiering or just airing alongside it at this point.
I think it was just part of the block of programming on Fridays with this. So it was a little cross-promotional thing. Yes.
Because Melissa Joan Hart shows up at the end, of course, who is an actual, well, Melissa Joan Hart's not an actual witch, but, playing her Sabrina character.
Are we sure?
I mean, I'm never sure. And so then in the next episode, for some reason, Salem, the cat from Sabrina the Teenage Witch, is still around and sucks them back into the 1940s. And there is like a World War II, the boys have to go off to war episode, which is sort of paralleling this ongoing tension with Corey and Topanga about them being separated.
Indeed. To parallel the story of the separation of Corey and Topanga, we have the separation of Jack and Eric. And so Eric can't go to war because flat feet or something like that. Whatever. Yeah, one of those.
He has like a medical
classic
exemption.
Jokes. And so Jack's going away and Eric won't be able to come with him. And they have a scene together where Jack is saying, I wish that you could still be with me in war. Like, I'm sad we're going to be separated. And Eric says, you still can. Take this picture of me. Put it in the foxhole over your bed.
Jack says, people will talk.
And Eric says, I know. That's a great picture of me.
And it's like, it's not a wallet-sized photo.
No, it's
like an
8.5 by 11.
Yeah. So Jack gets to the foxhole that he's in, of course, with Corey and Sean and everyone that they know. And everyone else does have a wallet-sized photo of their girl back home. And Jack has this, and it's framed now, this framed 8.5 by 11 of Eric, which he does hang
and
up.
Like a good quote-unquote friend, he puts it right on the top of all his stuff. Pride of place, even as everyone is watching him do it. And they are watching him. They all turn
and he has to repeatedly say, he's just my roommate, okay?
Yeah. And so then things are progressing in the scene, and Corey's really bummed that he's not with Topanga, and Sean's trying to cheer him up. And Sean says to the group, this man's hurting. Any of you other mugs got a hard luck story of a loved one left behind? And everyone in the foxhole turns in unison to look at Jack, who has to again say, he's just my roommate.
He's my roommate.
Sure he is, buddy.
From there, we skip ahead a little bit to season 5, episode 12, where the boys are looking for their soulmates. Now, despite both being very handsome young men, these boys really struggle to date in college.
It's kind of fascinating, given in the early seasons, the only thing we know about Eric is that he's good with girls. He has a different girlfriend in like every episode, but all of a sudden he goes to college, he gets a new best friend, and the two of them are hopeless with girls.
Dry spell.
So they've decided we got to find our roommates, and they just happen upon some random girls.
You said we've got to find our roommates.
Roommates, soulmates.
Freudian
is there
slip.
A difference? So yeah, they're like, we got to find our soulmates. They find a couple of random women and they're like, these could be them. Let's see if they're our soulmates. And so they go on a date with them, and it turns out they are exact duplicates of each other. So Eric is dating a woman who is exactly like Jack, and Jack is dating a woman who is exactly like Eric, to a humorous extent. And so they're going through and they realize how similar they are to each other's girlfriends, and they have this idea, well, we should probably try to swap, right? And be with the ones that are exactly like us, because wouldn't that make more sense? And so they're trying to maneuver the date so that the girls will end up with the other one, but the girls really aren't into it. And by the end of it, the girls are both like, why would I want to date someone exactly like me? I want to date someone I'm compatible with. And that's you, right? But they've had enough at that point, so the girls leave. And then the guys have to just be like, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll find our soulmates someday.
Lesson learned.
Lesson not really learned, but yeah.
Okay, our next data point is from season 5, episode 15, which is a Valentine's Day episode, where Jack and Eric don't have dates and they spend the whole day hanging out together.
I mean, what else are you going to do but hang out with your roommate?
Too true.
Then in season 5, episode 17, we have a pretty delightful episode that's a parody of Scream. So the kids are all trapped in the school together. There's a murderer on the loose. Jennifer Love Hewitt is there, because of course she would be. And there's just some fun little moments of like Eric getting scared and jumping into Jack's arms. And Jack, I think, says something like, have you gained weight since the last time you were scared? Like, he always jumps into his arms when he's scared. And then as kids are dropping like flies, because of course, you know, it's like it ends up being a dream or something like that. So Eric and Pfeffy, who is the Jennifer Love Hewitt character, have both been killed by the murderer. And Jack comes upon them and is like, Eric! Pfeffy, Eric! He was my friend and my roommate. I didn't really know her.
Yep, so that's cute.
Yeah, they're adorable.
And then towards the end of season 5, Corey and Topanga are having a little bit of tension in their relationship, as they sometimes do.
Often, you might say.
Yes, and for the first time, they're realizing they're not like 100% the same person and compatible, and so they're thinking of breaking up because of that. And Jack and Eric have to model for Corey and Topanga why they should stay together.
It's amazing how often the two of them are the mirror for the Corey and Topanga relationship.
Eric says something I think insane, as he often does.
Sure.
And Jack's response, he says an aside to Corey, you don't know what it's like to live here, man. You don't. Which is weird, because Corey's his brother, so he does know what it's like to live with Eric.
Corey does know what it's like to live with Eric. But then Corey says, then why do you stay?
And Jack says, because he's my friend. Because I like him. And no matter what crazy things he says or does, I still like him. God help me. I still like him.
And Eric, with a mouthful of sandwich, is like, oh, bring it in. And the two of them hug.
And it's nice.
They're very sweet boys.
Yes. So season 5 is a really good time. They're hanging out together. They're roommates. They're paired up. Mm-hmm. But then something happens in season 6, which changes the dynamic a little bit.
The arrival of the no homo lady.
Oh, Rachel.
Oh, Rachel. I don't have problems with Rachel on her own. She seems like a lovely girl. But it's sort of an interesting season of them trying to shoehorn her into the Jack and Eric storyline. So what had been just a fun best friendship of these two guys being best friends and hanging out, now the entire season is about this hot girl, Rachel, moves in with them because she needs a new roommate after her boyfriend that she moved to town to be with hasn't worked out. And so the entire season is the two of them both trying to win Rachel, fighting with each other over who can be with Rachel. And that's kind of every storyline for them for the entire season 6.
Pretty much.
But that doesn't mean we don't get some, shippy moments throughout the season.
Little hints at what Jack and Eric are like at home.
Exactly.
So in the season 1, or no, not in season 1, in episode 1 of season 6, when Rachel's moving in, Rachel says to them something like, well, it'll be like we're all girlfriends.
Yeah, because she's not looking for someone to date right now, obviously.
No.
She's just out of a relationship.
Yeah, she was having a hard time. And Eric says to Jack, she's like wandered off, if I understand this correctly, girlfriends sleep together, bathe together, and even get to see each other naked.
And Jack says, we already do that.
And Eric makes a shh motion.
And it's like, what are you guys getting up to?
Because the thing is, too, it's not like they're in dorm where they could have locker room.
They have
Yes.
different bedrooms, I think, and a bathroom.
Why are they bathing together? And why are they sleeping together?
I don't know. Why are they seeing each other naked?
Yeah, that even like I could like process that if they're both very comfortable to
And they
wander
just sort
around
of
the
walk.
apartment.
Yeah. But sleeping together and bathing together.
It's like,
I
interesting.
mean, maybe they fall asleep on the couch together or something.
Well, okay.
But the bathing together is a bit tough to rationalize.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know.
Okay. And then in season 6, episode 2, there's another moment where, weirdly, I think they're celebrating, like, their chances with Rachel or something stupid like that again. But it leads to Eric saying, dude, I don't know if this is the right time to say it. I love you, man.
Jack says, dude, don't even, man. I'm the one that loves you.
And Eric's like, dude.
And Jack's like, dude, come here.
And they hug.
again.
There's a lot of hugging between the two. What we should say is throughout the entirety of the seasons, they're a fairly tactile, couple of guys. Much touching.
Okay. We get to season 6, episode 4. Competition between Jack and Eric for Rachel's heating up. They're in class together and they have to do projects in pairs. And Eric immediately yells out, I called Jack. And then he says to Jack, I called you so you couldn't be with Rachel.
Yeah.
And Jack, of course, says, why didn't you just call Rachel then?
And Eric is like, I don't know what goes on in my brain or whatever he says.
Yeah.
But you're just sort of like, yeah, do you want him to not be with Rachel or do you want to be with Jack? Question.
Do you not want Rachel to be with Jack?
Yeah, is that what it is? In season 6, episode 6, then this is kind of about the two of them having to like be on their best behavior because they live with a woman.
Yeah, they're trying not to be slobs in front of a girl.
And she's trying to get them to just be themselves because she doesn't want to date either of them, honestly. But they're like, no, she doesn't actually want us to be ourselves. So there's a moment where she leaves to go to class or whatever, and Jack realizes, wait a minute, Rachel's not here anymore.
And Eric says, what are we still doing with our pants on?
Jack says, after you.
Eric says, why, thank you.
And then they sit down on the couch next to each other and immediately put their hands down their pants.
Yeah, so, the couch is size that they could not be touching when they sit down together on the couch, but they do. They're like shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
And then, they've unbuttoned their pants and they both immediately start putting their hands down their own pants. But still, bros, what are bros up to?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Neither of us are dudes, so like maybe this is common dude behavior. I don't know. But hands down the pants feels like a little bit suggestive. Are we all doing this? Question.
Is this a bros?
Is this a bros thing? Or is this it feels a little
A gay
risque
bros thing.
kind of bros thing, I don't
Hard
know.
to say for us.
We don't know. Don't know. I don't know your culture. Okay, and then we get to season 6, episode 10, the Truman Show episode, which is a lot of fun for
Very
various
fun.
reasons. But Eric has decided, I think it's because he doesn't have a lot of friends, and he thinks that people will like him because of this. So he decides somehow that it would help him among his peers if he could just film his apartment at all times and do his own version of the Truman Show without his roommates knowing about it. But of course they do find out and are quite angry. But he has developed quite the viewership among the college. And at one point, Jack comes home to confront Eric about it. And Eric is like, it's live. Anything could happen. And he grabs him and they dance together, which is quite sweet. And then all of the people who are watching at the campus coffee shop, one of them turns to the other and says, I told you they were gay.
And they exchange money.
They've been wagering about it.
Yeah. Okay. Up next, we have season 6, episode 16.
Jack and Rachel have gotten together sort of secretly. He's going through some trauma. She's trying to help him out. They kiss, and then they're like, that was probably a bad idea. We shouldn't get together. But then they can't resist it, and they actually want to be together. And so they're kind of secretly carrying on behind Eric's back, even though he does know that they kissed initially. And so Jack's trying to tell him, and Eric's trying to figure out what's wrong with Jack.
Yeah.
And so he's throwing out theories, and he says to Jack, I know, she's not that good a kisser.
And Jack says, no, she's a good kisser.
You don't feel comfortable around her.
I feel comfortable around her.
You don't like girls. You know something? I kind of knew that.
I like girls.
No, see, you just think you like girls.
No, I like girls.
It's an interesting theory.
And remember, Eric is very good at reading people. That's
It's
his
his
number one
superpower,
skill.
which
Which
you'll see
is
come back later.
keep that in mind. Okay, and that brings us to, I think this is the finale of season
Yeah.
6, but they're still working through Eric being hurt potentially by Jack dating Rachel. But Eric just discovers within himself that he never loved Rachel. He only loved the competition with Jack.
Hmm. How interesting. It's almost like you're totally obsessed with Jack. For what reason? Unclear. So over the course of season 7, there's a lot of moving going on, people switching apartments for various reasons that don't really make sense. But in one of these various moves,
Yes.
Jack and Eric have ended up they're kicked out of the apartment even though they wanted to move back in together. Oh, I think what's happened is Rachel and Jack have broken up, so they don't want to live together. Jack and Eric assume that means they get the apartment back, but Rachel assumes Jack will move out. And so she's invited Angela and Topanga to come move in with her, and the boys now have nowhere to stay, so they're going to Angela and Topanga's dorm. But they just,
Yes.
they can't vibe with it.
Despite the fact that Angela and Topanga have moved into the apartment, they have left all of their material belongings in their dorm room, including a Backstreet Boys poster that is up on the wall. And they're a little wigged out by all the girly stuff in their room. And Eric says about the poster, the cute one's looking at me.
And Jack says, you think Howie's the cute one? I thought Nick was the cute one.
And Eric's like, we gotta get out of here.
It's a weird joke for him. He doesn't usually gay panic.
No, he doesn't.
Then we move on to season 7, episode 13, an episode when Eric has found a lucky penny. And as all things with Eric do, it sort of spirals into the absurd, and the penny is quite literally lucky. And
Very lucky.
Yes, very lucky. He's convinced that the penny will protect him from all harm, and everyone's like, the penny is just a penny, you're crazy. And he's like, I'm going to prove it to you. And the way that he decides to prove it is fascinating. So in the middle of the campus coffee shop, he walks over to the captain of the football team who's playing pool with the other members of the football team, and he confidently says to him, just curious, as an athlete on the football team, is it a distraction being gay? And everyone in the room, like, gasps.
Oh.
And you're like,
But then
what's going on here? But yeah,
the
then...
football player says, thank you.
And Eric is like, it's okay. Like, this is exactly what he intended.
And yes, the captain of the football team says, I've been holding it in for so long. Fellas, I'm gay.
And one of the other football players says, that's okay, Rocco. So are we.
Really?
Oh, sure. And you're like, what just happened? What felt like the setup to the most classic 90s you're gay joke becomes another incident of Eric having this otherworldly perception about other people. And not only could he tell that this guy was gay, but also knew that it would help him to get it out there. And it was exactly what he needed. And it totally was. And it worked out for everyone.
Eric. Don't try this at home, guys. You're not as good at reading people as Eric.
And you don't have a lucky penny.
Oh, too true, too true. Okay, we skip ahead to season 7, episode 18. All the friends are going out to cool parties, except for Corey and Topanga. That's sort of the conflict in this one. But Eric and Jack are late to go to the club, and Sean knows it's because Jack's taking forever with his hair. And they arrive, and Jack is still like, my hair is just not quite right. And Eric reassures him by saying, you know something, Jack? If I were a woman, I'd think you were swell. And he makes a little kissy face at him.
And Jack considers this for a moment, and then he lights up and is like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sweet. We also learn in that episode that Jack has been kissing Eric's boo-boos for a while. He gets hurt, and he's like, make it better, Jack.
And Jack says, okay, for the last time, kissing the boo-boo doesn't make it go away. You'll be fine. I think it does. I think it's been working for you to kiss his boo-boos.
Yep.
So, all this loveliness is leading up to a season finale where everyone's sort of going their separate ways. Some kids are graduating. Some kids are not graduating, but moving on to start new lives in other cities for some reason at the same time. And
yes, some kids are going to law school without finishing their undergraduate education.
Wild stuff is happening. But Jack and Eric are not moving on to do the same things. So they're going to have to say goodbye. And I'm sure it will be extremely emotional since they're best friends, right?
And we get a lot of emotional goodbyes in this episode, you know? But no, they just sort of like briefly hug and are like, bye, man.
Yep. It's weird. It's quite weird. So yeah, I don't know what happened there. We were left a bit underwhelmed by the two of them.
I mean, they were going so strong in season 5,
Yeah.
and then it seems like the writers really lost interest in their pairing. Like they introduced the Rachel thing,
Hmm.
and then from then on,
Well, it's interesting because yeah, the pairing is so strong because Eric just gets more absurd and comedic as the seasons go on, and Jack is his straight man partner, and so the two
hmm
of them do sort of belong together, and they're always paired together in scenes. But I do think you're right that I think the writers got interested in other things,
yeah,
but then they really feel like an afterthought in the finale.
they have, I would say, probably like the least emotional goodbye of any of the characters.
Yeah.
Like Rachel gets more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay.
I don't know. Rachel's new. So that's the arc of their relationship. But I also wanted to take a moment to talk about Eric and gender.
Hmm.
He's a fascinating boy with a little bit of gender fluidity right under the surface there. So it is the 90s. And in the 90s, people did a lot of cross-dressing comedy, you
Indeed.
might say, to varied effects. A lot of it was very offensive. A lot of it was, I guess, all in good fun. But for the
We
most
haven't
part,
tried rewatching Bosom Buddies. We don't
no.
know.
And we're not sure that we should. Some things are better left in the past. But we have this very interesting thing going on with Eric and Jack paired against each other and wearing dresses.
Hmm
And so it's kind of interesting because Jack plays the traditional role of very uncomfortable with dresses and femininity and like making sure everyone knows that he's a man, a masculine man who would never do
hmm
anything feminine even in the multiple times that he is forced to wear a dress on this show. But Eric really takes a different route. I think he sort of shines when he gets to wear a dress. It's a whole new part of his personality that he really embraces. So,
hmm
we have multiple occasions of this. In season 5, episode 4, there's an episode where Eric, I think the setup for the joke is Jack is sitting in the hallway studying, and this woman walks by and is like, "Why are you in the hallway?" And he's like, "So that I can hit on pretty ladies," basically. And then Eric comes out of the elevator in a dress.
Mm.
And so they have a conversation about how Eric was walking by a frat house or something, wanted to go to a party where there were women, and so he had to pledge, and this is what they're making him do. And Jack says, "Doesn't that make you feel humiliated?"
And Eric says, yes, it does. I paid $200 for this dress and I'm never going to get to wear it again.
That is humiliating, Eric. What a
That's a lot of
shame.
money for a
It's
dress
so
too
much stress. Yeah.
in 1990 whatever it is.
And so then the course of the
When you could
episode.
buy a single family home in Philadelphia for $80,000.
Exactly. He's he's getting towards a down payment on a house with that dress cost.
Yeah.
So Eric decides in the episode that he wants to start his own frat so they can have parties, and he doesn't have to pledge. And he says, "I don't have to wear a dress anymore unless I want to."
hmm
Yeah.
And it seems like he does want to because later in that episode, Jack shows up in a dress and says, I don't want to talk about it. And Eric's response to that is,
Yeah, well, I do. You took that out of my closet. And it's not the dress he was wearing earlier.
no, he's got multiple dresses, multiple fancy dresses.
So that's just a peek at it. And then we get a full exploration of his feminine persona in season 7, episode 11, where
hmm
the two of them both have to dress in drag because they've pissed off a criminal who says he's going to kill them. They decide he won't be able to find them if the two of them are women. And so the plot of the episode is they're both dressed as women, and Jack sort of pretends to date the guy, and then they take compromising pictures of him with Jack
hmm
that ward him off. But the subplot of it is Eric, for some reason, is perceived by everyone to be an incredibly ugly woman. Can we talk about that a little bit?
We have to. We have to talk about it. So I think both of us had the experience of watching this episode and being like, why is this episode gaslighting me into trying to think that Eric is a less attractive woman than
It
Jack?
doesn't make any sense.
Because he's not.
He's
Now,
so beautiful.
Matthew Lawrence and Will Friedle are both very handsome men.
Sure,
Like, I'm
sure, sure,
not
sure.
slagging on Matthew
No.
Lawrence, but he has more masculine features to start with.
He's very sort of angular.
Yes, he has a very sharp jawline. And they also, when he's in drag, I think they cover his eyebrows. They draw them on very thin. It's like not his best look. But Will Friedle has softer features naturally. He has more feminine features naturally. And he has beautiful arched eyebrows. And he just
He's
looks so pretty.
stunning. And his whole storyline is someone tells him that he's ugly. Everyone does. Feeney tells him he looks like a bison. He has a storyline where he's talking to Topanga about how he's so ugly, and she doesn't disagree with him. And you're like, this is bizarre. They are living in bizarro world. He is gorgeous.
He's so pretty.
He's so pretty. But he also, over the course of this episode, is discovering his feminine persona. So earlier on in the episode, Sean is helping on this scheme to avoid the criminals who are after them. And so he is encouraging Eric, as he puts on his dress, to really lean into it. And not just like be Eric in a dress, but be a woman. And so he does. He looks into a mirror and he discovers his feminine persona, Chantal. And there's a whole voice that goes along with her. She's French and she's
French.
Very shy. And so through the whole episode, he is sort of loving being Chantal, except for the fact that everyone says he's ugly. But by the end, he discovers his inner beauty, which he should well know about because he's a lovely person. Mm-hmm. And so once they've solved their problems and the criminal's out of the way, and Jack is like, oh, thank God I don't have to wear this dress anymore. And Eric seems like maybe he could be into continuing to wear the dress. We get our little button at the end of the episode, and Jack's being weird. He's playing pool with Sean, and he's overcompensating and pretending to be very, very manly. And Sean's like, ugh, you gotta stop this. It's a real problem. And he says, oh man, I bet Eric's readjusting to his manhood better than you.
And then Eric walks into the pool area, still fully in drag. Hello. Hello.
And they say, maybe not.
And Eric says, hello, you two boys. It's such a beautiful day outside, but not nearly as beautiful as me on the inside.
And Jack says, Eric, we're in the clear. You don't have to be a woman anymore.
And Eric says, oh, I know, but see, I just discovered how beautiful I was, so I've decided to stay like this forever. It's so satisfying and rewarding to be in touch with one's feminine side.
Yes. And then a hot girl walks by.
And in his normal voice, he says, now I'm going to go get in touch with her feminine side, so excuse me. And then he goes back to his French lady voice and says, hello, we can be best friends. Oh, come on, everyone experiments in college.
He loves it. Just let the boy dress in drag. It's his favorite.
I would. I think they're gaslighting him because they want him to stop.
I think
and
they're
he realized
jealous.
how pretty he was.
Yeah.
He would keep doing it.
They know how powerful he would be if he knew how gorgeous he was as a woman. And he would just keep doing it. And they're threatened.
Mm-hmm.
They all are.
What's happening.
Feeney's threatened. Topanga's threatened.
Well, we also know, right, like, Topanga's got a lot of insecurities, as we learned from the episode where they both go on a diet.
Yes.
You know, Rachel's the tall one.
Yep.
Angela's the skinny one.
Yep.
Now Eric's going to come in and
be the pretty one?
That's tough.
It's really hard.
He's tall, too, relative to Topanga.
He's not tall. He's a short man, but it's all woman. Yeah. I just don't understand it.
She doesn't want to be fourth on the totem pole of pretty ladies in their group. I'm not saying that would be my opinion of Topanga, but that's how she feels.
Topanga is gorgeous. We can all agree.
Yes.
But so is Eric.
It'd be a battle.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe they don't encourage him. Okay, well, that's Jack and Eric.
Mm-hmm.
They're delightful. Eric, I'm in love with. Rewatching the show, I was like, this is one of my favorite characters ever. He's so fun.
Well, I said to you, too, early on in my rewatch, like, I think the interesting thing about this ship is I have a hard time watching the show. And I know Eric's a little weird, but he's just so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's
so beautiful.
Nicest, yeah.
And I'm like, why is this man single? Doesn't make sense to me.
Because he's in love with his roommate.
Exactly. That's the only explanation. There has to be something going on because I can't make the math work otherwise.
Yep. So delightful, though. Absolutely love him. Will Friedle, comic genius, and just the sweetest, sweet boy. So, what do the creators say and do? Anything at all? It's a show from the 90s, so unlikely,
Not
right?
much. We don't have much. If you have something, let us know. But we weren't able to find really anything. We found an unsubstantiated quote from someone who attended a con recently.
That was too lovely not to share.
Yes, but we like it very much. So, grain of salt with this one. We cannot verify this.
Yes.
But
so, Will Friedle and Ryder Strong and Danielle Fishel have been doing a podcast where they rewatch the show, and they've been doing live performances of it, and they've been touring. So this is how some people have been getting access to them, because there are Q&As and the like. And so this person on Tumblr, maybe they're making it up, maybe they're not, who knows, went to one of these and in their Q&A talked to Will afterwards about his thoughts on the sort of Jack and Eric and, what's going on there sort of thing.
So according to Sidekick Joey, who is the Tumblr person, I think we can just read this quote verbatim. I think that's probably the safest thing to do. Will basically said that he thought Eric never had gender or sexuality in mind when he loved. Eric is just a loving person. He mentioned how if anyone came into Eric's life and stayed, he attached to them and loved them. Will thinks he loved Rachel at a point and that he loved Jack towards the end there too. Eric was just a person that radiated love and cherished those who cared for him back.
I hope it's true because it's so accurate. Eric is just a loving person. He's so sweet. So, yeah, adorable. The real bummer for us in the what do the creators say and do section in terms of timing is, we mentioned the podcast, the time of our recording, they have just released a podcast episode about episode 421 of the show. So they are knocking on the doorstep of doing some Jack and Eric episodes, but they haven't gotten there yet.
So there may be some nice nuggets in there, but I also think hey, maybe this is like an intro for people to whet their appetite on the Jack and Eric, ship. And you can check out their podcast to hear any insights that they might have about what was going on in the show.
Yeah.
In the last 3 seasons. So maybe we can think of it less of we're early and more
we're the teaser.
Guys, think about it. Think about getting into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they let you write in questions on that show. So everybody write in some questions about Jack and Eric and let's see what they have to say. All right. So shall we get into literature?
Yes. Let's see what's going on over at AO3. I think we did some numbers again in our comedy episode, but it seems like there's been a little bit of growth since we made that episode. So this is still a smaller fandom right now as of recording. There are about 1,241,
approximately,
total Boy Meets World fics. 244 of those are Jack and Eric, and just for reference, Corey and Sean, who is the most popular ship in the fandom, is at 285.
Not that many more, really.
No. And we should say, too, that, again, this is a 90s fandom, so we also read that it certainly started on fanfiction.net, and whether or not some of these have been ported over to AO3, we're not sure, but there are about 903 Boy Meets World fics total, not to any specific ship on fanfiction.net. So certainly not the biggest one we've covered.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's okay.
But also not the smallest.
True.
So, we did our usual of reading the most kudos and complete fic in their tag, and that is When You Kiss Me, I Just Gotta Say by, great name, Digital Jorts.
Love it.
So, you want to tell me a little bit of the flavor of the fic?
It's very cute. So it's like a set of little vignettes almost. And in each of the little vignettes, Eric is giving Jack a little kiss.
Just a little one.
So in the first one, there's an episode in the show where Eric finds he's really good at Shakespearean acting. And so he's doing an audition and he's deciding whether or not to do another Shakespeare monologue or what's the other thing?
It's You Can't Handle the Truth, I think.
Oh, yes. Okay. From A Few Good Men. And so Jack is do the Shakespeare, and he does a romantic sonnet and holds his hand and kisses his hand and cups his cheek. And Jack's like, oh. And then later in the fic, they have a party and they're not getting a lot of play from the girls. And they sort of jokingly suggest let's do spin the bottle. And some of the girls are like, yeah, let's do spin the bottle.
Yep.
And they're spinning the bottle and Eric gets some girl and they kiss. And then 2 girls get each other and they kiss. And then Jack spins the bottle and it lands on Eric. And earlier in the fic too, Jack had said he never understood why people were so into kissing. It just never did anything for him.
Exactly.
And then he's too nervous to kiss Eric. So he just gets up and leaves this apartment.
Yep.
And he comes back and Eric's like, what the heck was that, guy? And he's like, I did want to kiss you, but just not in front of everyone. And so then Eric kisses him and he's like, oh, that's what kissing is supposed to feel like, oh, that's what I've been looking for. And then they kiss more deeply and
they're in love.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Oh, I
was.
think I missed the part where they're cuddling on the couch and Eric just kisses him on the neck and Jack's like, "What's that?"
Yeah,
And Eric's like,
whoa.
"I don't know."
Because yeah, it's basically like a 5+1 format thing where I think there are 5 different kisses, but they're all little tiny moments,
Yes. Yeah.
little pecks, and all along Jack's sort of like, Eric doesn't seem affected by this, but I'm really affected by it. What's going on?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I do love him kissing him on the neck, and Jack's like, huh? And Eric's like,
Hmm. Jack's just like, "Okay."
okay. Yeah,
It was very
it
cute.
was
I was
adorable.
reading it and I was saying out loud, "Aw,
Oh,
aw."
yes, they are so cute. So we have to talk about a phenomenon that we saw some people in the fandom talking about, which is pretty interesting.
Hmm.
This was a pretty quiet fandom for a long time, unsurprisingly, as the show ended. Did it even make it to the 2000s? I think it was in the 90s. So it died down, and then, like what happened to many fandoms actually during the pandemic, people were inside. They were revisiting all of their old favorite things and making fan content. And someone named President of Bimbo Town, another great name, released
Handles
oh my
abound.
god. Released a video on YouTube in July of 2020 called Jack and Eric being the best couple on Boy Meets World for 9 minutes straight, which has had like 5.5 million views. And they have another video after it with more than 1 million views. They released this video, it caught fire, and it basically single handedly reignited the Jack and Eric fandom. And so when you look on AO3 at fics that were written for Jack and Eric before this video came out, there are 36 of them. Then when you look post the video coming out, there are about 200. So
Yeah.
it's
Little
totally,
shot in the arm.
yeah.
Great work, President of Bimbo Town.
Oh my God. I see why we elected you president of Bimbo Town. This is the kind of great
Totally.
work we can expect.
So that's fun. So yeah, there's been a little uptick recently. I think it's interesting too. I was just looking up like when did Girl Meets World start airing, and it was 2014. So like that didn't
10
help at
years ago,
all.
didn't work. Well, the two of them are only in one episode.
One scene.
Two,
A
I think
couple
two
scenes in one
scenes in one
episode. Yeah.
episode, which we should talk about.
Yeah, why not right now? I think so. Yeah, we've mentioned already the podcast, so that's ongoing. So there may be more, as we said, nuggets of interesting information. But in terms of, how people working on, well, not this show, but related content see this relationship, let's talk about Jack popping up in Girl Meets World, the sequel series that goes on
Yeah.
in like 2014.
So you may think they had a pretty underwhelming goodbye at the end of the show, but maybe that's just because they're best friends and they knew they would see each other soon and they were just going to keep hanging out, so it was no big deal.
I do feel like that's undercut by the rest of that episode where everyone is like they're saying goodbye forever, and most of them are just moving from Philly to New York City.
Yeah, well, it's the end of their lives, living
Yeah.
2 hours away from each other. But anyway, you could see a world where it's like, we're besties, it's chill, we'll talk next week, it's gonna be fine.
Mhm.
Is that what Girl Meets World bears out?
No. Much like the iconic episode of Boy Meets World where they flash forward into the future and Eric has become plays with
Yep.
squirrels, Jack and Eric have not talked at all
No.
since college ended. Jack, who at the end of the show joined the Peace Corps with Rachel, we learn, dropped out of the Peace Corps and went to work for an evil corporation.
He leans into his worst instincts whenever he's not around Eric.
And Eric has become a senator.
Appropriately.
Yes.
I think he's what we need in our government. So anyway, they see each other again because Eric is at this coffee shop in town and Jack shows up and they haven't seen each other and they're like, whoa, crazy to see you. This is so wild. And I believe Jack does say something about them being friends and Eric is like, oh, are we friends? Because we haven't talked in 10 years. And so then they're like, all right, let's sit down, have a coffee. And Eric says, I'm here waiting. Talk to a lobbyist because I'm trying to do a deal with a good company, but there's a really bad company that wants me to work with them, and so they're sending the really attractive guy who wears nice suits and with pocket squares to come and
He's
convince
touching
me
Jack's pocket square.
to come and convince me to work with them, and it becomes clear that Jack is that lobbyist working for that horrible company. How could this have happened to him?
Because he lost touch with Eric.
Yeah.
So Eric decides that the way to like bring Jack back to the time before he became, an adult and had to make quote unquote hard decisions is to bring him to his niece's school dance.
Of course. What else would you do? And so, yeah, they go to the school dance, and Jack's like, wow, this is a really weird experience. They run into Corey, who's like, wow, Jack, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. What's new? And he's like, well, I'm at a school dance, and your brother is my date. And Corey says, so nothing has changed.
Mm-hmm.
The moral of the story ends up being Jack shouldn't have lost touch with Eric because he needed him to sort of stay connected to the better part of his nature, basically.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But that's all we get in Girl Meets World of them too.
Yeah, they don't come back. So hopefully they then become best friends. I read a couple of fics for the two of them when I finished watching the show. And there was one that follows Girl Meets World where they run into each other. And because of this revelation, I forget who proposes it. Maybe Eric is like, we should just move in together. So then the two of them move in together again and become roommates, but they're adults. One of them is a senator. And the other one, it was quite sweet. I liked that. They need to be roommates.
Actually, that would be very bad for a senator to move in with a lobbyist.
Really weird. Well, he needs to not be a lobbyist anymore, for one thing.
Yeah.
Maybe he can be unemployed. Just a little live-in boyfriend for the senator.
I mean, I'm fine with that.
I think it's great.
Yay. So, it's a good time. The show's pretty fun. I did find as I was going along, getting a little frustrated with some of the things that didn't quite make sense in the show.
Sure.
Again, the housing rigmarole, I was like, that's not how leases work.
You have to just buy in. The show is going to make some crazy logic leaps.
I also did find it fascinating, and this is not really about the Jack-Eric relationship at all, but the Matthews family are Gentiles. And as the show goes along, Corey gets more and more
It's so
Jewish.
weird. I don't really understand why they made them Gentiles to begin with. But
He starts using Yiddish more frequently. Yeah. He calls something a Meshuggah idea. He says like a nosh with Corey and Topanga.
The thing with the later seasons is they just embrace the zaniness and the chaos, and they don't try to be tied down to any sort of like actual storytelling.
Reality.
It is whatever the situation requires. And so then you just sort of be like, well, let's lean into Eric being insane. Like he does and says things that no normal person would ever do or say. And it's nothing like what he was like at the beginning. And let's lean into, obviously, the Savages are Jewish. And they just lean into
Savage
it.
is Jewish in real life, yes.
And they're just like, let's let him be his true self. And everyone just be the wildest version of whatever character you want to be. We're not tied to reality. But yeah, he does start saying a lot of Yiddish as the show goes on. And you're like, what's happening? He loves Christmas, though. Big Christmas fan.
He does love Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, who wouldn't love Mr. Feeney reading you the full Christmas Carol every year?
I love how Mr. Feeney is just a member of their family. It's so bizarre how their next door neighbor / teacher is just in their family. Every Christmas Eve, he comes and reads A Christmas Carol.
So I should also say, right, like, yeah, I'm going along and there's some things where I'm like, I can't believe this is the conflict. Oh my God. But also, like, I was crying regularly watching the show.
There are tearjerker episodes. And Will Friedle is so, so funny. Like, amazingly funny. And from the beginning of the show to the end, he grows so much as a comic actor. But there are several episodes with him that are dramatic episodes where I just sobbed. He's really good. There are so many good serious episodes. The show does good, very special episodes where you're just crying. It's really good. I mean, it's absurd. It's an insane show. But when it's trying to be serious, it's good at it. When it's trying to be zany and funny, it's good at it. And you just sort of have to be like, sure, they move 18 times a year for some reason, and it has nothing to do with...
And random people just move into their dorm room in the middle of the year.
Yeah, of course. That happens. Why not?
And Eric and Jack finished college in 2 years, and, you can get an internship and a law degree without finishing college yourself.
And just sort of abandon college somehow. Sure.
Well, anywho, are we at our question?
Yes, it's time to ask the question. Is it queer baiting, queer coding, or queer canon?
Are we in a nun situation again?
Sort of. I don't think they were intentionally queer baiting Jack and Eric as a relationship. I think that Eric is queer coded. Like, they do way too much with Eric that is not just like, ooh, a gay joke, but like, there's something going on with this guy.
He does stop dating women.
Yeah, he sure does. So I don't know. I think there's a little bit of that, but it's always hard for me to accuse a show from the 90s or before of intentionally queer baiting.
Oh no, I don't think we can. I think it's also hard to say that they were intentionally queer coding given how chaotic the writing was and how all over the place it was.
But that's the thing with shows is that like a writer writes their episode and intentionally queer codes Eric, and then in the next episode he makes a joke like, why is the cute one looking at me? We gotta get out of here. It just sort of is all over the place because of the writing. But I feel like there are enough episodes of him being queer coded, not just like queer adjacent, but I think queer coded, that it's playing in that space.
Mm.
But yeah, with a sitcom, you never really know what you're gonna get from episode to episode, character wise.
Yeah. Sometimes there are always stronger hands, but this is not a show with a strong hand.
Well, I think that the Corey stuff is more like, I think listening to them talk about Michael Jacobs, the creator, Corey is a Michael Jacobs stand-in. So his characterization is usually more clear because he just sort of is Michael Jacobs. But Eric, the characterization runs wild. He can be a completely different person from moment to moment and scene to scene.
Yeah.
All right, so none-ish?
None-ish.
None-ish. If you gender swap the characters, would they be a couple?
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, it would be like a roommate situation, like with Rachel, and it would be inevitable that they would have to get together sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But who are you gender swapping?
Well, I mean, it's easier to imagine Eric as a girl because he's so beautiful, but do you want like goofy girl or goofy guy?
That's a good question. And let's imagine the dynamics. Eric, as Eric, with like a pretty straight-laced girl roommate. That's kind of an interesting dynamic. Because what do they do together?
Yeah. And straight-laced girl roommate who is rich.
Yeah. I don't know. What would they do to hang out? It's hard to say.
Maybe they'd still like the same kind of movies. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. And then if we have goofy girl and then Jack.
Is she just a manic pixie dream girl?
Probably. That's the thing. Eric is a manic pixie dream girl.
He is. He is.
Eric is my manic pixie dream girl.
Fair enough.
So maybe you can only really get away with Eric as Eric. It's hard to make that play as the female character.
I love the idea of Eric dating a rich girl who's just like his sugar mama.
Yeah. But she'd have to be like Jack, where it's like she sees that Eric is a positive influence on her own life, right? Like she needs this because he's just such a good person. And it's harder for her to be a good person, like with Jack.
Yeah, but he's rich.
Being rich makes it really hard to be a good person.
I like that. That's better. I don't want a manic pixie dream girl. I want a manic pixie dream boy.
Yes. Keeps it fresh.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So why is it not canon? Because it's the 90s and it's a zany sitcom and, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yep. We said it wasn't queer baiting, so we don't need to use our queer baiting scale.
No.
Well. We find ourselves at the end of the conversation, I guess. That's Jack and Eric.
I guess so. I wish we'd gotten more of them.
Me too.
I'm with you. I don't hate Rachel, but the addition of Rachel really interrupts our Jack and Eric times.
There were apparently conversations at the time of Jack and Eric spinoff. You can tell in the end of the episode, that last episode, they were thinking about doing a New York spinoff version of the show because everyone moved there. So there could have been different things, but it didn't end up working out. We could have had more Jack and Eric. What a shame.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, before we get to what we're talking about next time, we needed a quick interjection about a pressing issue of the day. So we have been getting a couple of messages from people about 911 because there have been some interesting developments on that show. while I am aware, we're both aware of the interesting developments and are very interested to talk about it, I'm sort of holding out a little bit of, hope/interest about what they're going to do specifically with the ship that we talked about before, the buddy ship. So I think instead of doing an episode now where we talk about it and then potentially having to do another episode where we talk about further updates, we're just going to wait a beat and see what goes down on the show.
We're going to let it ride.
Yeah, let it ride, people.
So, as always, we appreciate people writing in and being like, hey, this is a thing.
Yeah, and it is a thing.
We want to acknowledge we're thinking about it.
Yep.
It's cooking.
It's cooking, baby. So, what are we talking about next time?
So this is another suggestion that we got probably last year. Who knows when? If we kept better notes, we would know. Sorry, guys. Anyway, we're going to be doing Scream. Just in time-ish.
For Halloween. A little early. For Halloween.
It's going to be a little early.
Or better early than late, I think.
Yep.
But we're excited because I've never seen Scream. You've never seen Scream either, have you?
I have not either. So it's a 90s classic. Of course, referenced in Boy Meets World. So I've seen things that
we've seen the Boy Meets
Scream.
World episode. So that feels like we know what we're talking about. Indeed. But I'm excited. And to hear that there's queer subtext in Scream is also very exciting. All right. In the meantime, if you have comments, questions, or concerns, you can reach out to us. Our email is ltbkpod@gmail.com. We are on Twitter and Tumblr at ltbkpod, and we have a Discord. You can find the link to it on our Tumblr page. If you're enjoying the podcast, tell a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe. The next episode of Let the Boys Kiss will be out in September 2024.